Welcome to today's edition of Daytime Dialogues. It's my pleasure to welcome Rabbi Dr. Alexander Seinfeld to our program today. Rabbi Seinfeld is obviously an ordained rabbi, a graduate of Stanford, a PhD in Jewish studies, a former high school science teacher, the author of a number of different books, and the developer of a fascinating app as well. The latest book he came out with is one called Body and Soul, The Torah Path to Health, Fitness, and a Holy Life. It's published by Feldheim, and it came out in June of this past year. Thank you so very much, Rabbi Seinfeld, for joining me today.
It's a pleasure and honor.
So let's start with the first book, and then we'll work our way backwards to the other books as well. Body and Soul, it's a big book. It's not a small little book. And it brings sources from Chazal and contemporary sources as well. What's it really about?
Body and Soul is you could consider it a curriculum, or you consider a reference book. And that's why we put in a detailed index. So people who don't like to read books, at least they have it as a reference. They can find almost any topic you want. It's a book about how and why, maybe I should say why and how, to take care of your health. And the motivation part of it is key, because everybody knows it makes sense to be healthy. Like, that's common knowledge. Everybody wants to be healthy, but many people don't realize or think about it as a mitzvah, as a kind of spiritual precept in Judaism. Or they suspect it might be a mitzvah, but they really don't know what are the parameters of that mitzvah. What does it exactly entail? What is my Jewish or spiritual obligation in terms of my health? And so for those who lack motivation to do what they probably should be doing better, we give you that. And for those who have the motivation but don't really know what to do, because I don't trust anybody anymore. You can find anybody online who'll say just about anything about health, and who do you trust? So we wanted to make sure it was robust scientifically as well. We have a world-class medical advisory board. I have my co-author as a medical doctor, and we made sure that anything we're saying in the book has been tested with evidence-based medicine as well.
So give me a piece of advice that people would find surprising that's in the book.
Well, surprising is, I don't know if I want to use the word surprising, but look, we have a whole chapter on sugar. What is the Torah approach to sugar? And what do you need to know medically about sugar? Some people think that I'm anti-sugar. I'm not, per se. I had someone call me up a couple of weeks ago and say, thank you. I said, what for? I said, because thanks to you, I didn't eat a single donut during Hanukkah. And I said, kind of chuckled. I said, I'm not anti-donuts. It's okay, as a rabbi speaking now, not as a doctor, but it's okay to eat a donut once in a while, or eat some sugar. But understand that here's the answer to your question, Rabbi. The fact that you desire to eat something, whether it's for the taste or your stomach's growling, doesn't mean necessarily that that's what you should do. Some of the desires we're given in order to conquer them. And you can obviously apply this to things outside of food. I mean, you can apply it to my neighbor's wife. Just because the fact that I might desire doesn't mean that's okay to go after. It's just the opposite. We have a specific mitzvah, and there's one of the top 10, right? Don't go after your neighbor's wife, right? So the desire itself, the sea change in your thinking that the Torah wants us to have is, understand what the desire is for. The desire is there to perhaps increase your pleasure, enjoyment. Yes, you should enjoy food, but it's also there to control. And you don't look. You're asking me in an interview, and there's a whole chapter on this. The chapter 1 explains this in depth, but I'm just trying to give you the bullet point here.
So the Rambam talks about this often, and philosophers put it in different contexts, that part of actually the core of Judaism is to take those things that are desires and control them, so that we only have those things that we're supposed to be doing, to take the ratsui into the mitzvot and look at life as life of control. The Rambam talks about aspects that, whether it's clothing, we have shatnez to control what we do with our clothing. We have kashrut in terms of eating and pieces, and every aspect of life. There's something in Jewish life which demands that we take control of what we
And
need.
to your point, I would like if the audience should take only one thing away from this interview, and one thing only, I want it to be this: you can change your profile. You can make changes. It is within your control. Many, 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 maybe as the rabbis say in the Midrash, 99% of sickness is your fault. All right. Like you can make changes, and they don't have to be radical changes. They can be small baby steps that will make a huge difference in how you feel, in your mental well-being, in your emotional well-being, in your memory, your long-term investment in your health, so that you don't end up in a wheelchair or a nursing home when you're 85, 90, 95. We want you to live a long, healthy life. And most people, you can do so if you will start today making small but significant changes in a lot of things, not just food, not just exercise, but yes, obviously those are part of it.
And would you consider the book a how-to book, or as you started out, more of a reference kind of book?
Yeah, it should be. There's people who've told me already. The book has only been out for about 6 months or so. People have told me recently. Someone said, I followed your book, carefully, and I went from being pre-diabetic to no longer being pre-diabetic. Somebody else said, I followed your book. And it's not even a weight loss book. There's a chapter on weight loss, but it's not a weight. But someone said they followed the book and they've lost 15 pounds. Yes, it is a how-to book for those who want a guidance.
Mhm. And how does this fit into an earlier book that is better known, The Art of Amazement, Judaism's Forgotten Spirituality? That came out about 14 years ago. How does that fit into your amazement principle? How appreciating Judaism more?
I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that I never thought about it in this way before until you asked me, but they really they go hand in hand. The Art of Amazement is a book to explain and teach us how we we always try and think of ourselves as smart monkeys. We're intelligent animals, and we're trying to become more spiritual. And I think that Judaism actually says the opposite. We are spiritual beings temporarily with having this animal experience that we need to now make that work somehow. And the Art of Amazement is to teach you how everything in life was put here for you to raise yourself up, whether it's your physical self, your body, your home, and so on, your relationships, your job, your challenges, your creative output. All that are vehicles that God has given you to elevate the whole world. Well, that's what body and soul is as well, except body and soul focuses only on the body part of that. So it's taking sort of an Art of Amazement idea and taking it way down this long path of how can I turn my bodily experience into something truly spiritual and transcendent.
And in terms of life itself, going back to the Art of Amazement, what do you think is the most amazing piece of the Art of Amazement when people read it or learn it or listen to your lectures, seminars? What's the thing that they walk away with?
They walk away with learning how to become a connoisseur of life, as the French would call. The French have this word. We all know the word gourmet. A gourmet is somebody who understands how to savor. There's French have another word, gourmand. A gourmand is someone who just eats because he wants to fill his stomach. So most of us are going through a life because of our animal side as a gourmand. We're just consuming. We're not doing it mindfully. And that's sad because there's so much potential. Imagine somebody, there's, believe it or not, it's a good thing you're sitting down. I'm going to tell you something that's kind of shocking. There's people out there who can't tell the difference between a $50 bottle of wine and a $5 bottle. To them, it all tastes the same. Can you believe that?
I know many of them.
you know what it takes to tell the difference between a $50 bottle of wine and a $5 bottle of wine? $45. But besides that, one has to slow down and taste wine, and you develop a palate that can appreciate the difference. It takes time. Is it worth it? Well, ask somebody who enjoys wine. Most people would think it is worth it. That's just an example. I'm using that as a muscle or as an example. This applies to everything in life, including my relationships. How many of us have a relationship that we don't savor and we don't appreciate? Even a hard, difficult relationship can also be savored. or a stranger on the street. There's a mitzvah. The rabbis say in Pirkei Avos, the ethics of the rabbis, every single person you see on the street, you should greet with a smile. How's that possible? Well, think about it. There's a walking image of God coming towards me. How could I not smile? Well, because I'm lost in my own thoughts and I'm not paying attention. Start paying attention. Pay attention to what's around you. That's what life is for. Life is to be lived and not to be gone through on automatic pilot.
Is there one aspect of life that you think people have the hardest time savoring?
Yeah. Challenges.
Savoring challenges you get.
Pain, physical pain, emotional pain, difficult relationships. People just feel weighted down by the financial difficulties, worries, anxieties. This weights people down and they can't enjoy life when they feel this burden of worry and anxiety. The news they read, what's happening in Israel, around the world, just makes them full of anxiety and they can't savor anything.
So how do you savor the fact that there's a war going on in Israel?
That's a difficult to answer on one proverbial foot. And for many people, I would suggest you have to minimize the pain, the news. You can't. It can overwhelm you. You have to be careful, and that's not just for Israel, but anywhere where there's bad news. Reading about it too much can overwhelm a person. You have to be careful, right? But I'd like to answer your question with a more ordinary example. Okay, I'm sitting in my home and I hear an ambulance go by. Okay, so what's that all about for me? I mean, that's somebody else. I could ignore it, right? But if I want to make that into something more meaningful, I can think for a second. Wait a second. If there's a God running the world, who is an infinite God, and this whole world is like a virtual reality, fine-tuned, so each one of us has exactly the experience we need to have to grow spiritually, then that ambulance going down the street at this moment wasn't a random accident. It would happen to me. I didn't think, thankfully I'm not in the ambulance. But what happened to me is I heard an ambulance. That was meant to happen to me for me to react in some way. Well, what's the most basic reaction I can have when I hear an ambulance? Please help them save a life. That's all I say. I say a quick prayer. And I've turned what otherwise would be a non-event in my life, an ambulance going on the street, to a spiritually uplifted moment, right? Say a little prayer for that person. And that's okay. That's a micro example, but the Israel war is a big example of the same thing, in my opinion.
Does it savor that ambulance going by? I heard a similar thought also years ago from Rabbi Telushkin. Joseph Telushkin was giving examples of this as well. And that was specifically the example he offered. Does it allow you to really savor that moment, or does it allow you to relate or to respond to the moment as opposed to ignoring it?
Yeah, I think it's semantic. Savor doesn't always mean enjoy. It means to appreciate its significance to me right now, to the world, right? I can also be thankful we have such a thing called an ambulance. We have such a wonderful technology that lives can be saved, right? There's many layers of that, but certainly what I mean by savor is, I mean, be in it, be mindful about it, and don't ignore it. Don't let it be just like the wind. Even the wind, there's so many things in life that we just ignore and we don't experience. Experience it fully.
Now, one of the other things you recently launched also is an app, the Amazing Jewish Facts Daily Calendar, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk about that a little bit? What is that?
This is my newest project. I'm so excited by it. Okay, this is everything I do is through my nonprofit organization. It's a nonprofit, but we hope to break even. So, I fundraise to fund these things. This is what I do. So that this app, and if you're using an Android, I'm sorry, it's not available for Android. It's only available for iPhone for technical reasons right now. We could possibly do an Android version, but anyway. Every single day at the time you choose, it will put on your screen a nugget of Jewish wisdom, history or trivia that will make you go, wow, that's interesting. And I've tested it out on many people. No matter how educated you are Jewishly, you'll find, and even non-Jews enjoy it. And it's 30 seconds, maybe 60 max of, for example, what did Louis Armstrong say about, he's considered by musicologists one of the greatest musicians of the 20th century. What did he say about the Jewish influence on his music? Music, not some, promoter, right? What does the Talmud say about airplanes and telescopes? What is the Jewish definition of love, and how can that help a person improve their relationships, their marriage? These are just random examples I'm taking off my head. I have a year's worth of these, and the cool thing is that each one has links to more info. So if you're interested in that, and you want to hear a class on it, or read a book about it, or read an article, we have links on them. Otherwise, it's just, and I haven't told you my favorite feature yet. Out of 2 million apps in Apple's App Store, it's the only one that keeps Shabbat. It's Shomer Shabbos. It doesn't work on Shabbos. And it was very hard to program this because it has to now know your location, and and not only that, but we also put Hebrew calendar on it, and a Gregorian secular calendar that work in tandem. And that was also tricky programming. It's just a little thing I wanted to do to make it more interesting. So that's in a nutshell what it is. And you can share them with your friends, the facts.
Do you remember what today's amazing Jewish fact was?
I have to look it up. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at it yet today.
That's okay. I'm just curious.
I can tell you, we did one for Martin Luther King Day. We have one. Some of them are tied to secular holidays, just to make it more interesting. So for Martin Luther King Day, we had one about what Martin Luther King said about anti-Zionism, and people who say that they're anti-Zionists are often anti-Semitic, and that's just a way of hiding their anti-Semitism. It's interesting that he said that in the context, and we quote that. We have quotes like that. We have a quote from John Adams, President John Adams, what he said about the Jews, and Winston Churchill. And, these are, it's a gold mine right in your phone.
And to do a daily, that means that you've written 365 facts.
Yeah.
Are you on the next year's 365 yet?
It's like writing a book, and it's a lot of work. And I try to write them in a compelling, interesting, fun way. And I don't even know if I'm going to do a second year at this point. It may be, I was thinking about that, Rabbi, because I have some of my students have tested it for me, and they've asked me this question. I suspect that if you see the Louis Armstrong fact again a year from now, you'll have forgotten a lot of the details. So we have this concept in learning Torah called chazara. It's okay to review something. It's not bad. You don't always have to go forward. Sometimes it's okay to go back and review. So I'm thinking about not doing a new year's worth of data and let people review it.
Mm-hmm. And so now let's go back to you for a moment. You started out as a high school teacher. You were teaching science.
Yeah.
How did you go from being a high school science teacher to being a person who talks about spirituality, appreciation, amazement, even on health and fitness? How did that journey happen?
It's surprising. If you tell me that there is a scientist, a card-carrying scientist, a physicist or botanist or biologist who's religious, that wouldn't surprise me. If you tell me that there's a scientist who's an atheist, I would be shocked. I don't see how you can learn about, say, anatomy, the human body, or how a cell works, and not have a religious experience. The world is so phenomenally amazing. And Maimonides, Rambam says in his Mishnah Torah, he says the most basic avenue to developing a spiritual life is studying science, learning about nature, learning about this world is like God's painting. He's painted a painting. If you want to learn about Picasso, look at Picasso's paintings. Don't read about Picasso. Look at his paintings or his sculptures. If you want to learn about Michelangelo, look at his painting. You want to learn about God, look at his painting. That's this natural world. That's all science is trying to make sense of and appreciate the natural world. It's a natural trajectory.
And so one day you were teaching science, and the next day you thought, I'm amazed by this world, and you started working on the book. Was there something in between that we're skipping?
Yeah, there's a few years of I don't have a really ready answer to your question. It just seems to me like I personally felt I spent years in yeshiva studying and seeing around me both secular Jews and Orthodox Jews who were kind of living life on autopilot. And for me, I wasn't. I was naturally connecting to everything, and I thinking, what do I know that they don't know? And I realized they were not doing what I had learned to do as a science teacher. Just stop and appreciate the world. So what the art of amazement is, kind of like body and soul, it's guiding you to holding your hand to help you really appreciate the world that God has given, including your body, including everything else. That maybe that's the answer to your question.
Now, you work with all different kinds of audiences. You work with people who are Balei Tshuva, who are not yet observant. You work with people who were from birth, who were born into observant families and identify as observant. You can work with audiences on the East Coast and on the West Coast, with teachers, everything along the way. Who's most receptive to this idea of stopping and appreciating life? Is there one group, or is it really individual?
I've not met somebody who's not. I've not met somebody who's not. I have not literally. And just like body and soul, which is focusing that on the health part, I've not met somebody who's not who the book has not helped. Like literally, like I'm willing to offer you a money back guarantee. I'm so confident that this will help you because it's literally a universal. And by the way, we made a website. I didn't mention TorahHealth.org for people who don't like to read or can't get the book. It's a free website. Go to TorahHealth.org, and many of the same resources from the book we put there in other formats. This is how we understand. I'm glad you asked this question because Torah. What is Torah? Torah, the way I understand it, is absolutely universal. Applies to every human being. There's no human being on the planet Earth that Torah is not relevant to them. Just like there's no human being on the planet Earth that science is not relevant to them. Okay. The issue is a communication. How do we help you access that wisdom? Everybody's different. So we try to create, children are different than adults, and, Americans are different than French and Israelis. So we need to find ways, we teachers, our job is to find ways for human beings of all stripes to access that wisdom in the way that works for them. That's my job. That's why I created a new book, because I needed to find a way for you to access this wisdom. And that's why I created the app, because for some people, they're so tied to this device, it's so much part of their lives. If I don't give it to them, the Torah in their phone, they will never get it. Literally.
Have you also taken these messages to non-Jewish audiences?
Not per se, but there's always non-Jews in my audiences, just the way the world we live in. And I have I have some non-Jews who communicate with me frequently, regularly, and I have one. He's from California. That doesn't really mean anything, but he's reading The Art of Amazement, and some of the more Jewish stuff he just skips over, but the universal stuff he loves, and he talks to me about it all the time.
And if you had a magic wand, what would be the next thing you'd want to get involved in?
The next thing I would like to get involved in is I do a lot of work with marriages. I have done in the past. I've helped marriages. I've done marriage seminars and retreats, and I feel that there's many marriages that could have been thriving that didn't, because they didn't have the right guidance they needed. And I would like to expand that work if I could, to help more people at any stage of their marriage, especially the earlier stages.
What's holding you back from doing that?
Time and money.
Just two small things, but isn't that one of the challenges we talk about?
Yeah, that's right. And I also have a family of my own, and I have children who need my attention once in a while. So like everybody else in the world, I'm juggling and balancing, and I'm probably not as efficient with my time as I could be or should be. So it's one of my challenges is to not waste time And maybe with your encouragement, and if Rabbi, if you send me, a weekly message, text or email reminding me, that'll help me. So I appreciate
That would be one of my challenges then.
it.
Of the books that you've done so far, which do you think was the most difficult to create?
No, body and soul, without a question. Without a question. Body
Because
and
of the
soul.
medical side to it?
It took me 10 years.
Wow.
There's so much, you have to get it perfect. And I had to test the material out on audiences and individuals to make sure, because my rabbi, when I started the project, I asked my rabbi for his advice, should I do it? And he said, make sure, yeah, you do it, but make sure you don't make it too hard for people, because even though people want to follow a healthier path, if you make it too hard, they're not going to. So I had to really go through many, many iterations of the material. And scientifically speaking, I had to make sure it was fully robust. So I had so many checks and balances in the system. Very, very difficult to do, but I'm very happy to say I think we have a winner here, and it's not me. I mean, it is me, but I had a lot of help with a lot of people, and they deserve a lot of credit. Could not have done it on my own, but it really is I think it's a home run for a lot of people. People are getting healthier and doing what they know they need to do, but it's giving them that motivation and that path, that guidance that they need.
Now, your co-author on that was Dr. Daniel Grove,
Yeah.
medical doctor. How did the two of you meet each other? How did that shit up work?
Serendipity. So one of the motivators in the book for a Jewish audience is, here's a funny thing. We have this concept in Judaism called the Yetzer Hara, the inclination to do the wrong thing, whether that's to be lazy or to lose my temper or to eat something unhealthy, right? This is called the Yetzer Hara. So in this research and development of this book, I learned something about the Yetzer Hara. It's much stronger than I had thought. I'll give an example. I would show the material to, say, a rabbi, and he would, let's say a typical rabbi, or maybe not a rabbi, but an Orthodox Jew who follows the rabbis. And he would say to me, this all seems very true. It makes sense. But if the rabbis, meaning the big rabbis, don't care about it, why should I? Listen to the Yetzer Hara. It's all true, but if the big rabbis, so I realized, okay, I need to add a whole chapter of the book about rabbis. So I recruited cold calling for 2 years, part of the R&D, rabbis from around the world and Rebbitzins who had names, who either part of a community or part of, even the chief rabbi of South Africa. I got them to agree to let me put them in the book to what they do to fulfill this mitzvah in terms of food or exercise or both. There's 100 rabbis and Rebbitzins there. Okay. So you have no excuse now. There's 100 rabbis around the world who are well known, who are all doing this. What's your excuse now? Okay. People need that leadership. And we're trying to, most people, as we see in the Torah, Jewish people have always been mostly sheep with a few shepherds along the way. Moses was a shepherd, right? King David was a shepherd. And that's the metaphor for our leadership. Most of us are sheep. That's not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with being a sheep and not being a leader. But we need to ask the real shepherds, and I'm not one of them. I'm talking about the rabbis, the ones who are leading congregations, have a whole flock. Please make sure that your flock is being led in the right, healthy way in this mitzvah. And I'm currently in dialogue with these rabbis. We're strategizing. Like one rabbi just wrote me today or yesterday. I had asked him, could you consider trying to remove from your shul poison that you're serving at every Jewish function? Which poison am I referring to? The only thing we say in the book that is absolute poison in terms of food that really you should try to cut out of your life is liquid sugar. Not sugar per se, but liquid sugar. Liquid sugar in any form, whether it's Coca-Cola or orange juice or apple juice or grape juice or iced coffee, that's a really, really, really bad for you. It's not good for you. And we explain why in detail, what it does to your body. It's really something you want to avoid. So I asked this rabbi, what about not serving that in your shul? You could have seltzer. You could have, flavored seltzer. You could have water. Do you have to have this poisonous liquid sugar? right? So I asked this to several rabbis who have shuls. One said to me, we decided he's going to ask his leadership to do 50-50. Well, if you're going to have Coca-Cola, you have to have equal amounts of healthy, seltzer. He agreed to do that. But another rabbi said to me, if we did that in my shul, if I tried to mandate that, people would feel like I'm being a nanny and that they would not like to be told what to drink or what not to drink. So look, it's his congregation. I can't tell him how to run his business. But this is a challenge for me to try to guide the rabbis to be the shepherds that we need them to be.
Fascinating. I believe it or not, Rabbi Seinfeld, our time is up. And I want to thank you. I'm looking forward to spending some more time with Body and Soul, the Torah Path to Health, Fitness, and a Holy Life. It's paperback. It's from Feldheim, on Amazon. But I also want to thank you for all of the work you've been doing in providing that additional appreciation to life itself. You should continue to write, continue to teach, and continue to have the good health that you're helping everyone else have as well. So thank you so very much.
Amen to that. And thanks so much for having me. And you and your audience should be gesund, be healthy.
Amen. Bye-bye. Thank you.